I almost said no to this. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was just as a great thing where it was like,
Yeah.
wow, like, why does this work? And one of the key things that we picked off of this that we're trying to do more of is
Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Always Be Testing podcast. I'm your host, Ty DeGrange, and I'm stoked to have Matt Gatozzi on. What's up, Matt?
hey, good to be here.
Great to have you on. It's been awesome to be able to follow your progress and growth with awesome creative in the fun-filled world of EComm and DTC, and it's been a pleasure to be able to collaborate with you as well, and dive into all the things that you've learned. I know there's a lot to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here. Excited to chat all things ads and creative.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. When you think you've witnessed D2C e-com, ads, creative, the testing aspects of that, what performs well, what doesn't perform well. There's a lot of like noise in the market. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of people kind of selling things. Like when you think about that crowded world, like what are you trying to bring to the creative and ad game in what you do?
Yeah, I think, right now the biggest thing that I hear is there's a lot of noise on account structures and bid caps, ABO, CBO, all that fun stuff. And not to say that that's not important. You need a good account structure. You need, really good kind of fundamentals of that. But that's only going to get you, efficiently, maybe an extra 10, 20% lift. What's going to really give big lift in your account, your brand, is understanding who's your customer and why are they buying. It's so easy to get distracted by so many other things, like should we add this software tool or should we use this AI thing or whatever. But at the core of it, it's like if you don't really understand who's your customer and why are they buying, and positioning through messaging, whether that's on statics, whether that's through landing pages, whether that's through videos, if you're not truly understanding that and really kind of tightening and clarifying why somebody should buy from you, all that account structure really means nothing. No bid cap is going to save you from a bad ad, right? At the end of the day, you still need to have great ads. At the end of the day, you still need to have a true understanding of your customer. So I think, clear out the noise. Like, yes, you want to think about how account structure is working, but spend 10x the time actually like looking at your customer reviews, talking to your customers, and thinking about interesting ways to shoot your product versus being like spending so much time in the account. Because again, what's going to really move the needle is understanding how you're actually talking about your product to consumers. It's competitive out there, so you really need to
Yeah.
be focusing on that. So that's what we've always done, but just doubling down on just keeping things simple and basic to that, because I think it's so easy to get distracted elsewhere.
Yeah, I love that, Matt. I think there's like a simplicity and a rising above the noise and a quality level that you're keeping in mind, you're focused on. When you know those in D2C ecom come to you for help in ads and in video shot and shooting, what kind of clients are you kind of finding kind of that magic, and what are you typically seeing? What's like a good fit for what you and your team are doing?
Yeah, the best thing I would say is we're looking to work with companies that are an est company. This is a new phrase publishing out for the first time in public. I've been saying it in calls, but an est company is an EST company. What does that mean? It means that you can describe their product with the superlative, the best, the finest, the first, whatever it is, right? But there's a superlative that's connected with their product. And why do I say that? It's because if you, as a brand, want to stand out. You should be unique. Your product is unique. You feel like you are one of one. You don't even have competitors because you know you're creating your own journey and own category. But yet, why does the content look the same as everybody else, right? So I'm not saying, always do the prettiest stuff or the ugliest stuff, but my point is that your content should have a unique plan. So what we try to do is try to connect and understand what makes you unique and how can you have creative that actually helps you stand out to be unique. And if people can understand what makes you special and what makes your product special, they're going to want to buy. So what we try to do is uncover that and then actually go out and
Yeah,
produce that content for them.
got it. And so, like, if I could kind of just dumb down what you guys do, you're creating video ads that perform well on social. Can you kind of share more about the just basic nuts and bolts of what you're doing for these kind of top tier brands?
Yeah, so the biggest unique factor to Gattozzi Studios is the fact that we don't work with creators. So most providers out there, they say, "Oh, we do ad creative." Most likely, they are doing some sort of creative strategy, but they're kind of arbitraging between creator and brand. And they're just kind of like the middleman, and they're constantly seeking after creators and things like that. Nothing wrong with that. It's just there's a lot of people out there. What makes us different is that when we are working with a brand, you're working only with our team. We're going to go deep on who is your customer, why are they buying. Then we actually write out all the scripts. We shoot stuff in person. So we work with actors, we rent out spaces, we produce everything in-house. So if you need a grandmother, we can get that. If you need a child on camera, we can get that. We can get anybody or anything you want. Dog, we can get that too. And then we can shoot everything in-house because so we could shoot hi-fi, so we can shoot with our cinema cameras, we can shoot on an iPhone. So really, like, for whatever brand, whatever they need, we can make happen. So we have the most like kind of control. And I think that's what I think is
Awesome.
really great for brands.
Love that. Love that. I love that control and ability to create original content from scratch that performs. That's huge to have access to a lot of that. You kind of referenced ugly ads versus pretty ads. Barry, our friend, talks about this. We've seen it live and in action, and it's kind of, I think through it, it's very core to the theme of the podcast of learnings from D2C com, learnings from the ads that you put out. Whether it's ugly or pretty or authentic, like, what are you witnessing in the learnings from these great ads and these videos and these creations that you're putting together? I'd love to dig into maybe some of the observations and learnings and trends that you're seeing right now.
Yeah. So honestly, like, I have had so many conversations with Barry, whether it's publicly or within DMs, and have had many calls with him. And I love his philosophy. Honestly, we actually agree a lot. But I think we always like. I think I've laughed with him. Like, I feel like we say the same thing, but we come at it from two different angles. But I think, a great ad was never a great ad because of what the camera was. Okay, point blank. Like, it was never great because of being an iPhone or because it was a cinema camera. It's great because of the intention behind what was created. Why was this created? Who is this for? So I think the biggest distraction that happens is that people just kind of like, they hear these things, and I think that's like the dangerous thing of just saying make ugly ads, is because I think sometimes, not like, Barry has the nuance. He understands that. But I think what happens is, and what's scary is that people just say, "Oh, like, he said make ugly ads, like, so we're going to only do iPhone or like only do whatever," which is like true and good. But really, it's like what he's really trying to like get at, and which I agree on, is like, you got to meet the consumer with where they're at. But at the end of the day, you still need the fundamentals of a great ad, right? So you need to really be speaking to that person. So I always like want to always preface that. I think where there is some interesting stuff when it comes to what camera you use is when you use a nicer camera, you actually can get some really interesting different shots that you can't get with an iPhone. And so that allows you to have a little bit more elasticity or flexibility with what you're shooting or how you shoot something. And depending on the brand, that might be really a great opportunity. It might not be for it may not be for every brand. It may not be for every single ad, but you also don't want to rule out what cameras you're using. So I always look for that. And then the last thing is like, you always need to be authentic. You always need to be speaking to who is your customer, right? So whether you're shooting that on an iPhone or a nice camera, it needs to speak to the right person. And so you can't be all things to all people, but you really need to understand who's your customer and why they're buying. I think that like
Yeah.
people get so distracted by a lot of this other stuff that they don't really know why a customer is buying from them. And that's honestly the more tragic thing, not because somebody used on-brand visuals or not on-brand visuals. It's most likely because they didn't actually speak to the customer specifically.
Yeah, I love that. Something we've incorporated a lot in our work is really emphasizing speaking to the customer, and we've even done that in our own work as well. What are some of the things that you've uncovered in, going through some of the customer insights and speaking to the customer?
I think one of the biggest things that I love to do is just find stories. Um, so a lot of times, like, there's always so many interesting stories on reviews, and you're just like, wow, like people just take the time to really talk about the impact or something that was really great about the product, and you're just like, that in and of itself is an ad. Like, let's make a script off of that. So that's one thing. Um, I think the other thing is that what we find is when you are working in a brand for like a long time, you start to make assumptions because you know so much about the product, you know so much about the brand that you just kind of forget that like people don't know who you are or what you do. And I've termed this like the
Hmm.
Nutcracker rule. So when I was a professional dancer, I did Nutcracker. Did Nutcracker for 14 years. I've done over 1,000 performances of it. I know everything about the Nutcracker, but even on my 800th show in my 10th year or whatever it was, I I've been doing it forever. I know everything about it. But there was somebody in that room, in that theater, that for the first time was watching the Nutcracker, and I need to make it as magical for them as it was 800 shows ago. And in the same way, we need to apply the Nutcracker rule to our ads. I don't care how many times you've seen their product. I don't care how many ads you've run or whatever. Most likely, unless you're Nike, right? Where if I say Nike, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Most likely, if I just go up to a random stranger and say some random brand name, they don't know who you are. So we want to make sure that we are still speaking to that person. And that I think is like the awareness issue that a lot of brands kind of get stuck in. And I think even for us, I have to push my
Yeah.
team of like, hey, when we start working with the brand for like 12 months, I'm like, we are now in that bias, right? We have now kind of crossed over to where they were 12 months ago. So as a partner to them, we need to break every single rule again, just like we did when we first came in, to help understand like, hey, just because we're reaching 3 million customers, that means that there's still 300 million Americans that still need this product, right? So like we still have a long way to go. So we want to make sure that we're missing that. We're not making a mistake of having that awareness bias, which I think I've seen a
Hmm.
lot in a lot of brands and even in our own cells. So we're trying to combat that internally as well.
I love that. That's a huge call out of the value of like speaking to customers and also the value of you know checking some of those inherent fatigue or bias or thought process at the door to really rethink and get the best possible outcome for clients and for your work. So I think that's just spot on. Kind of a related topic. You talk about authenticity. I talk about it a ton with my team. We talk about it a ton with our clients. It's a huge part of what we're doing around securing trusted content, getting like influencers and affiliates on board to really talk candidly about your product's pros and cons. But in the ad creation process and the video production process, how do you kind of like manufacture that? How do you bring that real authenticity out since it's being shot from scratch?
Yeah. Honestly, this is this is the hardest part, right? I think one of the biggest things that we try to do is whenever we're working with an actor, right, they're going to come on, but we have everything prepared. So we brief them before they show up to the actual shoot. We have them interact with the product. So I will physically be there and I will sell them on the product, right? Which, as a side note, try to sell your item, your product to a person in real time. It's a really different experience because you're actually seeing the reaction. You're seeing if they light up or if they don't care at all. So that's just a great way to like learn if you can actually sell a product. But what I try to do is I try to get them to light up, right? I try to understand what the product is, what is the goal of these videos. From there, the team will then go and shoot the content. We'll do the B-roll. We have like voiceovers that we have them run through. But one of the other kind of key components that we try to do is now they've interacted with the product, they understand what we're trying to go for. We do what we like to call prompting. We'll ask them questions and just say, hey, can you just give us like naturally, what do you think? Right. And we had one product that is is for women and basically like a lot for younger women. Right. But the target demo, actually the target buyer is like moms. So moms buying it for their kids or, kids going to college, etc. And what we did, we just asked this person like, hey, like, if you were to give this to your daughter, like, what would you say? Why would you want to use this? And she just genuinely just like shared, like, I have a daughter, this is why. And we were able to kind of extract that from her. And yes, we had this script that was dialed into direct response copywriting, but then we were also able to pepper in some of this more genuine experience because now that she's understood the mission, she's understood the product, how it's used, she was actually using the product and feeling it with her own hands. Now she can talk about it in a way that's genuine. So those are some things that we're trying to do. We're still trying to get better at it. It is not easy to do. I think everybody's struggling with that. Obviously, like ideally, you have your true customer just come in and talk, but you're not always going to get like the best videos. So you really want to create that environment that feels comfortable. That's like the
Hmm.
biggest conversation we've had internally. We're still trying to crack the
Yeah,
code, but I think we do a fairly good job with what
yeah,
we have so far.
yeah. I love that. I love that being able to kind of capture some of those real moments that are actual human reactions that can be integrated into the story that can perform well. Similar thought and very related to the thought of experimentation and testing and learning, which is obviously central to what we talk about on this pod. How do you handle some of the volume requirements of clients? How do you get the learnings out of it? How do you think about A/B testing in this world? Obviously, it's trickier in some ways because you've got a lot of variables. You've got video, you've got actors, you've got dynamic things that stories to tell. I'd love to hear just how do you kind of handle the scale, volume, and kind of test and learn desires of clients and brands.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that like realistically, you can't get extremely scientific like down to like one change because there's so much that happens. The other part of that is, 95% of human thought is subconscious and our subconscious thinks in emotions and experiences, not even in words or language. So it is fairly hard to like actually truly like pinpoint exactly why things happen. So if you can just first let that like sit, then that doesn't put as much pressure on like, did we get the exact like scientific, A/B, test. That being said, I think that you want to balance, like, I think where people maybe go wrong with their like testing with ads specifically is like, let's say you get, you run an ad, you get the data back. A lot of people instead of just iterating slightly off of that, they will like do like a net new concept. They'll like take that learning and they'll be like, let's do a whole new video. And I think that might be too general. Like you can't get super specific, but I think that there's plenty of times where one ad could, based on the data, you could basically maybe go like 3 or 4 different ways. And like from
Yeah,
there, try those 3 or 4
yeah,
different ways and like go that
yeah,
route versus being like net new,
yeah,
like sort of
yeah,
thing. So you can't go
yeah.
too granular, but you can't go too wide or too broad either.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's like you could go almost like different actor, same everything else. Different call to action, I'm just thinking out loud here, and I think obviously you have to be macro and careful. You're not going to be able to test every variable like you said, but different color schemes, different backgrounds. Maybe it's featuring a different value prop of the product. Um, is that kind of in line with how you might think about maybe making medium changes as opposed to like reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, and I would really use data to kind of help us make those decisions. So, and I think a lot of times like not everything's going to work right off the bat. So let's say you have like a static, um, you know, I might not like. Let's say we have 3 different headlines for the same static. Like I might find the like let's take the top one of 3 that has the highest click through rate. Okay, awesome. Let's say that's a winner. Now maybe we want to do the same headline and everything, but with like 2 different backgrounds and see if we can optimize that. Maybe that's the best one. Maybe there's another one. Like kind of go from there. But like, you know, I wouldn't like try to iterate on all 3 and like now you've got like 9. It just becomes this massive tree. So I try to like simplify it,
Yeah,
because you got to always, even though we are the creative, even though we're not running budgets and running these accounts, you have to understand how accounts work, which is like, you still got to test, like, you still got to put at least like 10K, 5 to 10 times the AOV just to run these tests. So like, you don't want to get too granular where you're like, you kind of are not able to like you can't take like you don't want to go for bunts, right? You want to go for doubles, triples on these iterations, and then with the net new stuff, you're going for home runs, right? So you're kind of, it's like there's a slugging percentage here, and it depends on what you're trying to do. So that's kind of my main thing is like, use the data to kind of help you. Like, I'm not the biggest
yeah,
fan of being like, let's change like the CTA on a video. I'm like, like, I don't know if that's going to really make the biggest difference. I feel like maybe what's being said or what's being shown throughout the video is going to compel them more than being like, oh, dang, they said buy now instead of like learn more. I mean, maybe, but doubt it, you
agreed.
know.
Yeah, there's too much else going on in the video that supersedes that, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you got to keep it somewhat simple, and you got to also think about those macro levers that are going to make the biggest impact, which I think is spot on.
And just to kind of
Y-
quickly off of that,
Yeah,
like, just
yeah,
you want to work with the key as a creative is work with your media buyer who can help forecast like, okay, here's what the spend is for the month. So realistically, let's say if you're at 200K a month, right? Okay, well, you want to maybe, let's say you want to do 10% of that towards a test, like towards testing, right? Okay, so 20K, awesome. But like, that let's say it's like $1,000 for a test, let's just say for even numbers. That means you need 20 ads, right? You need 20 ads to hit that 20K budget, right? And that's all forecasted. So, it's approximate, it's not specific. And like, those levers might go up or down depending on performance. But like, just by purely looking at that, like, and looking at the forecast for the month, maybe for the quarter, that can help you kind of backtrack as the creative. What do we need to create? Like, do we really need to create 5 iterations? If we, are we going to use 25% on one iteration of like one ad? Like, probably not, right? So like, it just is helpful to work with your media buyer and forecasting budgets and testing budgets so that you can actually break down like realistically what you need. Statics might be cheaper than videos. So like, how many statics do you want versus videos? These are things that like we want to do to kind of like be a better provider. So I think like also think
Yeah.
about that before you just like start coming up with a
Yeah.
million ideas, because like that's not, it's got to
100%.
align with the budget too.
It's not created in a vacuum. And if you're thinking about it through the context of budget, ROI, goals, KPIs with a great media buyer like Roundbarnlabs, and then teaming up with a great creative team like Gudo, I think you're in a great spot. So I love your direction there. You you had some really interesting comments throughout that I'd love to just kind of double click on a little bit. You kind of talked about kind of 5 to 10x AOV. Would you mind maybe sharing a little bit more about that part of it?
Yeah. So there's more to that than just budget, right? I think there's also like a time horizon as well, right? So like when we're working with a brand, like we are trying to, like they know they have their account, like they've kind of have dialed that in a lot more. So like, all this is just approximate stuff. Like I think, and every brand is different. Like we're working with the brand that's like, the AOV is like $2,000, right? So it's like a very different thing versus something that's like $30, right?
Hmm.
So every brand
Hmm.
is obviously going to be different. So the key is to first understand like what are the metrics that are like find success. Like, are you looking for a cost acquisition, like a CAC, or are you looking at MER or a ROAS target or something like that, right? So like that's number one to kind of understand when you're in the testing. Then we are looking at like, okay, we need some money to go, uh, you know, to actually test this. The key though is the time horizon. So you don't want to just blow, like, let's say it's like 5 times the AOV, but it's all in one day, like on a random Tuesday. It's like, whoa, what would that be like in the swing of the whole week? So ideally you gotta have
Hmm.
like the balance between like a week in terms of time in the market, but then also like budget wise. Um, Granted, I'm not
Yeah.
like the media buyer, so I'm not like like super like
Yeah.
into how it all goes, but like ideally that's just kind of what we're trying to do, because before we make
Yeah.
changes on iterations and things like that, we want to make sure like, hey, did we give this a shot to like give us the most like statistical significance on the data that we can actually trust that data to say, okay, let's make some decisions here, whether it's
Yeah.
change it or keep scaling it or whatever. So that's the biggest thing for us.
Yeah. You're coming at it from such a great mindset because you're empathetic to the levers that the media buyer can pull. You are aware of the pretty important factors that the brand is considering when they're thinking about return for the investment. So I love where your head's at, and it just echoes a lot of the collaboration and work we've done. So tip of the cap, the dad gang cap to you
That's
again.
right. Yes, exactly.
Repping the brand, I love it. You had another really cool point. You talked about kind of like mix of home runs to bunts along that spectrum. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, for example, look, sometimes you're going to strike out. That's the reality, right? So, a Hall of Fame career, you're batting 300%. I mean, hey, you're hitting 3 out of 10, right? So so just thinking about that, right? So not everything's got to be a winner, but there's definitely plenty of times where, let's say something's getting like $5,000 of spend. It didn't blow up. It didn't, it wasn't anything amazing about it, but it wasn't terrible either. um, we want to say, okay, let's say that's a single, right? You're on first base. Can we do something about that where, we can improve it, right? So that's when we're looking at the creative metrics, and then we're saying, okay, like, oh, like that was like, and a lot of times this happens when, brands are running maybe some like influencer content on paid, or maybe they got some videos sent over. People are not like direct response creative people all the time. So maybe it's like a great like testimonial video, but it's like, oh, like that hook wasn't really great, or, it was kind of
Hmm.
like a boring cut. Maybe we can add some stuff in there. And that's when we come in and do what I like to call framing. Framing is
Hmm.
taking something that feels like kind of like maybe almost too organic and adding in some of that kind of direct response, like framing to it, to kind of give it a little bit more kind of meat on the bone, if you will. And that
Hmm.
can hopefully
Hmm.
upgrade that from a single to a double or to a triple, right? Where you're getting like 15K on spend on that or 20K of spend. Maybe it doesn't end up being like this home run, but you are
Yeah.
extracting value out of that content. Most brands have a lot of content that like kind of did all right, but if they just add a little bit more framing, whew, you might be able to really get some efficiency out of there, right? So there's that's truth to account structuring, like bid caps, cost caps, CBO, ABO, all that fun stuff. But it's also true with the creative itself. There's a lot of times where some stuff is like solid, you're getting some good signal there, but it just like not enough to like really hit like that 100K spend or a million K,
Yeah.
million spend. But if you
Yeah.
could do some changes, maybe some mashups, all of a sudden you have a whole new ad that could like really take off. So that's what we like to kind of look at as well. We want to be hitting for those home runs where we're coming up with the scripts and all brand new visuals. But then there's a bunch of other stuff that it's like, hey, they're men on base. Let's get them home, right? Let's try and find
Yeah.
how we can do that if we keep to the
Yeah.
baseball analogy there.
I respect the sports analogy. I very much respect the baseball analogy. And I think you brought us some really interesting things. Framing. Can you define that for the audience that might not know what that means?
Yeah. So what I mean by framing is, let's say somebody like just posted a video on TikTok and, you get the rights to use it, but it's basically just them like, oh my gosh, guys, I love this product. And like, they're just kind of like babbling along or whatever. And maybe they don't even have captions on it. They just run it just like raw, like
Yeah.
does decent. What I like to do is say, okay, let's just take some basic principles that we know of ads, ad creative that works, and let's just add some framing to it. So we just basically are kind of editing the video to have some like structural aspects of good ad creative, hence framing, right? So it's like you've got this canvas, it's great, it's flimsy, just we got to
Mhm.
frame it up, make it look like it's presentable, right? And it almost creates a whole new look and feel of the video. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Love it.
Um,
Love it.
so yeah.
That's great. I think people appreciate that. Not as aware with all the inside baseball to keep that analogy going. And then you kind of reference like, okay, an ad is spending XYZ dollars. Okay, an ad is spending XYZ dollars. Uh, for the audience, we're reiterating the point of like, hey, we're looking at a number of metrics to assess an ad's performance and its success. But what you're getting at is that, hey, the media buyer puts this into paid social. We see that one's spending much more than the other. The algorithm's favoring it, therefore it's performing better. Is that kind of what you're getting at there?
Yeah, I mean, all the algorithms are incentivized to find buyers, right? Like that's like the biggest thing. You wouldn't keep spending if you weren't finding buyers. So I think that there is a good signal, especially now where a lot of how media buying is, from my understanding, is
Hmm.
really trusting the algorithm, right? So you're kind of putting it in and finding it. Like it used to be very much like find the right audience, and like it used to be heavy on structure. Now it's a lot less than that. So finding spend gives me a good signal that like, hey, Facebook clearly is seeing like that this is like there's something here. So I look at that. I look at, again, you need to know what are the targets, right? Every brand is different. MER, ROAS, CAC, all this stuff, right? So like you know that going into it. So I look at spend. I look at let's say CAC, just 'cause it's easier for today. We look at those two things, right? That like
Of course.
base value, is it getting spent? Is it hitting your targets? Yes or no? If it's yes, like great. Like let's see. Maybe is there a way to optimize the ad? Maybe you could improve some stuff, but also like keep running it. If it's not, but it's getting some good signal, but not getting the conversion, awesome. Like let's iterate on that. Let's try and see where we need to go. If it's not getting the conversion and not getting great signal, have a conversation. Do we want to kill this ad or do we want to try something differently? So there's kind of three responses to that, but it all starts with like spend and your acquisition like North Star metric.
Love it. Love it. No doubt. Hooks are such an important piece, right? You want to stop that thumb scroll. We want to get people's attention. What are some of the best hooks that you've seen or you and your team have created?
Yeah, so I'm gonna shout out to this brand because I have seen this brand and I'm freaking out. Also, It's a pretty ad. So I just want to say, this is why I like it. It's called Kion, Kion. And I did a tweet about this, which was just like, who the heck are these people, and how are these the most fire ad hooks ever? So when I look at this stuff, I'm like, this is amazing. So basically, what they do is, um, I can send you over like so that we can have it maybe in the show notes, but I'll just describe it
Yeah.
out loud. It's a supplement, and so you basically have like your little container, and the person's basically going in to kind of scoop out the powder, and the hand goes through the whatever this container, and then it goes into like them doing an exercise. Like, it is this crazy transition. If like you were listening to
Love
this,
it.
like, you go to the show notes, we'll link my tweet thread on, and I show you all the different ones. It is blows your mind. But basically, like, one of the guys is like puts his hand in, and then all of a sudden he's just like swimming, and you're like, what the heck? And the whole, like, it's a silent ad. There's no talking or anything, which I love. And you just get like, you get the understanding, like, this thing is going to give you energy to do whatever that is, right? And so it's just a
Love it.
really amazing, like, really smart way. And I love it. And it just goes to show you that it was never about the camera, right? So that's the key why I like this. It's like, yes, it's highly produced. It looks high end, which I think personally, as a visual brand for a supplement, makes you trust it, because it's like, it's a high priced item. You kind of want to make sure that you're not buying something sketchy. So a nice visual brand does it, but they were able to still build uh, visuals that hook, right? And they were able to do that because they had a nice camera. So they were able to do things that an iPhone couldn't do, right? So that's the beauty of that's why you don't want to just always throw it out and say like, oh, it's got to be
Yeah.
UGC iPhone stuff. Because then you
No.
wouldn't have been able to do something
No.
like that has captured people's
Yeah.
attention. And it was truly, I see so many ads. I was on the couch. That made me stop. I said, what the heck is this?
Love
And,
it.
and so
Yeah.
like, it
I
genuinely
think I
came up
sent that
into
to
my
my
feed,
team.
and it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I love that. Appreciate that. It's excited. Um, is there an ad that you recall, either within your portfolio or similar things that you've just seen, just like from a data perspective, or you've heard anecdotally that's just like, obviously this could be one of those, but is there one that's maybe different from that that just was a workhorse and performed extremely well, or maybe perhaps better than you expected?
Yeah, I can tell you one that I almost didn't run, and it's now got $1 million in spend. So what do I know, right? So take everything I say with a grain of salt, because, man, my bias almost got in the way, and that's the difference of $1 million for one of our clients. So, I gotta
Love it.
watch out.
Love it.
Yeah. So it really humbled me. But the reason why was this. So we're shooting, and the person was the ideal customer, right? Look, feel, everything. They weren't like what we try to do. We like legitimately, when I say like actors, like sometimes we just get people we know, right? We try to get like just regular
Hmm.
people, right? These are not like
Hmm.
professional actors that we're working with, right? We're
Yeah.
just like trying to find, we source them on Instagram. We're just on Facebook. Like, we're just trying to find random people. Anyway, this person comes in because it's a friend of a friend, and they're like this, 45-year-old woman, perfect for this product, all this stuff. And like, she was like, because she's a friend of a friend, she's not like she like knows how to hit lines or whatever. So she's like, it's kind of awkward. And I remember like, I was actually shooting this, like, my team member who was actually shooting, she was shooting something else. So I happened to be doing the lines with her, and I was like, man, like, I don't know, like, I'm not feeling this. Like, she wasn't hitting lines, like, legitimately, like, looking off screen, coming back and like hitting like things. I was like, yo, like, okay, whatever. But we were like going through it, and we're okay, like, you know what? It's fine. Like, she does it, and
Yeah.
so we do this, and it was like her voiceover, like, it was her main voiceover, but then we also added in like other women like using the product and showing it off. So it was a little bit of a mashup. So it wasn't just a solo person, but like overall, like, the delivery is good, but it does feel like a little bit more like awkward or like whatever. like it just crushed. Like you just can't, we haven't been able to beat it, and it's so funny because
Wow.
I was like told my team, I was like, I almost said no to this, okay, and it was just as a great thing where it was like,
Yeah.
wow, like why does this work? And one of the
Yeah.
key things that we picked off of this that we're trying to do more of is sometimes when people are talking to the camera and they're just like barreled down, like just straight into the eyes of the camera, that's not how most people talk, right? Like most people can't really keep eye contact. And a lot of times when people are talking genuinely, they always like look away to kind of like gather their thoughts and gather their words and then look back. So in
Hmm.
some ways, because she was like she was like kind of stumbling in a way that felt like kind of like authentic, it really like worked and it was kind of funny. So now we're actually telling people like, hey, like we're not saying like make mistakes, but we're kind of like it's okay to make mistakes. Like you don't need to like hit these lines perfectly. In fact,
Yeah.
like look off
Yeah.
camera, try to figure it out. But it's just one of those things where it's
Yeah.
like, dang, like it almost like it just I don't know, like I was didn't feel it like
Yeah.
personally, but
Yeah.
$1 million from spend, you know,
I love
I don't
it.
know. I don't know what
I
to say
love
to
it.
that. That's a winner, right?
Yeah.
So it's good.
I, I'm amazed by how often if you line up ads and copy and things and you get people's vote on what's going to perform best, it's very difficult to predict and people often get it wrong. So one, you're not alone, and two, I think it's a very interesting learning, and I think you've uncovered something there which you're trying to understandably, you know, duplicate, replicate, improve upon, which is what this is all about. This is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's like a best practice or trend that in your world, in video ads just took off, or in social ads just took off, that you think is maybe starting to fatigue, or maybe is starting to no longer perform like it once did?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the rise of TikTok, there was you could pretty much post like any kind of like just video from iPhone and all this stuff, even without like great like direct response like content. And I think that's where we did get that swing of like ugly ads and things like that, right? The downside is that there's a lot of fundamentals that were never really there. And so I think just like it's more of the economy than anything. The economy's catching up, right? Like think about it, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. It's like it was
Yeah,
ripping, right? It's a very different
yeah,
game that we're playing, right? So
yeah,
the market
yeah,
is different. So it's really not necessarily a trend that's going down. It's just more so like you have to be keyed in to your ads and how they're being created. So again, I'm not here to say like UGC is dead or, any of this other stuff.
yeah,
I'm just saying that you need to have your fundamentals down, right? Every single brand is trying to, be profitable, get costs low, all the stuff. It's going to happen when you dial in your position, when you dial in how, like, who is your customer and why they buy, which is kind of what we've talked about since the beginning of this whole thing, right? Like, that is going to be the key. So is it a trend that's dying on? But yeah, I don't think that you can like just get away with just letting it rip on a phone and just saying like, okay, that's good enough. Let's do 100 of these. I think you got to be way more strategic. I think there was some bad habits that were created and were rewarded because of stimulus money that like people were buying things without real reason. But now that debt is climbing up. There, the money has
yeah,
gone away. So like you can't get away with those bad habits anymore. So I think the brands that really have the fundamentals down, know who their customer is, and is really keyed in there, and can do great ads, great direct response copywriting and scripting and shooting. Those are the winners. So it's not really a trend as much as it's like, hey, it's time to like, the
yeah.
bad habits. If you got them, you got to start retraining the
The,
team to make sure that they've
it,
got the
it,
right stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of the law of shitty click-throughs by Andrew Chan. I mean, people rush to the next thing. TikTok ads are no longer shooting fish in a barrel. You're competing with Temu who's spending $1 billion, and you
Sheesh.
need to spend more, you need to get more, you need to have better hook rates, you need to have better everything. And like you said, those fundamentals, if those fundamentals are not there, you're going to get your butt kicked. So I think you're really onto something that these emerging channels are fantastic, but they all fatigue, they all mature, they all go through those life cycles. And so what a great point. Love that stuff.
Yeah,
Very cool.
definitely.
Um, Matt, you're growing your business. It's exciting. You go through those waves of challenges and opportunities and positives. Can you share a little bit about like, what are you looking for kind of for your culture, for your company at Gudo, and what you're kind of look for in hires in your world?
So my superpower is the team, right? So it's not even me. And my goal is just creating a great environment for creative people. So most companies don't know how to manage creative people because they don't understand like the energy flow that it takes to do creative work. And that's why they burn out a lot. My goal is to create a great environment to do that. Now, one of the biggest things that I'm looking for is just like the muscle to create or the passion to create. I think there's like a huge sentiment out there of like hire fast, fire faster. I think that's just so wrong because most of the time it's because you didn't train them good or train them well. Like you just assume like, dang, like they're just going to come in and just let it rip. But it's like they have no idea what's going on in your brand or agency or whatever. So what I'm trying to do is I'm really trying to focus on people that actually like have like just like the desire to create. So I'll give you a great example. I was looking for somebody to help film all of this content. I went on TikTok, I searched for people in Seattle, and I found somebody who was in college at the time, didn't have really a big following, but was just creating skincare content and all this stuff. The reason
Hmm.
why I hired her was because she, without a following, without any, paid reason to create, she created, right? Other people applied to that job who said, I want to be in social media. Okay, yeah, that's great that you say that. But when I look you up on Instagram and you have no videos, like, do you really want to be there? Like, do you really want to? Because, like, this other person over here is like creating, even though they have no, like, there's no kind of like money coming in, right? Like, so it's that passion to
Hmm.
create, that's really hard to teach. But if you give me that passion, I can teach you ads, I can teach you marketing, I can teach you everything. But if you just have that passion for what you're doing, that's what I'm looking for. So those are the big things that I want people to see. Now, there's going to be times where we're going to be hiring for other positions that are not like in the video space, but I still want to see like your desire because it's easy to coach and train and you should do that, but having the desire to like want to create or want to show up to something, that is harder to find. But that's a make it break it for your culture, like as a team. And honestly, to have the most like the best creative, you got to have the most collaborative space possible. And so you have to make sure that people like really want to show up and be there. I had one of my team members yesterday. We were chatting. She's like, "This is the first job that I come back from vacation and I'm like, don't dread." And I'm like, yeah, because we've built a great environment where everybody wants to be there. So it just makes it super
Hmm.
easy for everybody to show up and be their best selves. So that's really one of the core things that I'm looking at for team members.
I love that. It's awesome to hear, and I think there's so much to that, supporting, fostering the passion and the energy and the enthusiasm, and educating, coaching, and kind of enabling that. That's a fantastic point. Um, you've done some awesome things, man. This has been so interesting and so learning. It's such a good learning. I think getting into some of the details and also some of the macro things. Where do you want to take Gudo Studios?
Yeah, I mean the North Star for us is we'll be shooting Super Bowl commercials. So that's the overall like long term goal. Um, I think for a lot of people out there, like I think when agencies get a bad rep, it's mainly because like the person starting the agency is doing it for like money or doing it for like something other than the passion of the work, but I'm doing it for the passion of the work. Like I love to do this. Like I honestly, I'm like, I'm not like an entrepreneur. I'm not like actually a founder. I'm just like artist that was like, I'm using business as a vehicle to do the thing that I've always wanted to do. And I'm building a team to fulfill the art that I want to be able to do. Right. And so the reason why we want to grow is we want to be helping more brands, understand their customer and why they're buying and create ads that convert, but also so that we can start to work with some of these other bigger brands to take all the stuff that we've learned and grown from. Like we have built such an efficient process. There's so much bloat in the big production companies. They take like 20 million people just to get one shot. They take a full day just to get one shot. It like kills me. And it's like basically just like brands overpay for like not great creative that's like has no connection to marketing. They're just like, what's the best what's the coolest lens that we can use? And it's like, yeah, but who cares about the lens if it has no touch to marketing and like the reason why people buy? So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to go up market and build the production. And that's really our goal. But yeah, that's what we're building. And every year we're just going to keep chipping away, as we grow, but we're growing out of a passion, right? So we're growing a team that's passionate. And that's like the biggest thing that I need to protect. Like it's not growth at all costs. It's building the team that is excited to create, wants to be here. And if I was like younger, like to me, I'm like, getting paid to create, like that's like the dopest job. Like, and that's what I want to be able to do is get young people in here to say like, hey, like you can
Yeah,
actually get paid to create, which I wish I was able to do when I was 20. I kind of had to pave that path for myself, but now I want to give people opportunities where I'm like, hey, you can be your most creative self here. Like, let's shoot for the fences and let's do something together, and
love it.
collaboratively. So that's what I'm excited about.
This is awesome, Matt. I feel like we could go so much longer. We've almost gone a full hour on just some great detail, your journey, where you're going, where you want to take this, and I really appreciate you sharing. I think this is one of my better ones because I think we've been able to kind of pull back the curtain on ads, video, creating that authenticity and really talking about what works and what doesn't. So tip the cap to you there. And for those who want to reach out, learn more about you, where would you suggest they connect with you?
Yeah. LinkedIn, Twitter, Matthew Gatozzi. So just my full name. Very easy. We got a new site coming up very soon, which I'm excited about because our current site sucks.
Watch out.
So watch out. And yeah, so goodoststudios.com. There's a place where you can book a call if you want to. But honestly, just like DM me, hit me up. Like I always love chatting with anybody. So like before you even book a call, like let me know what's up and happy to help
Yeah,
on anything.
fantastic. Matt, you rock, man. Always a pleasure. Hope you stay warm up in the PNW and the storms coming. And
Yes,
we'll look
sir.
forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.